mind can't get no rest. No, no, I've been down so long that my mind can't get no rest. No, no, this ain't easy, darling, 'cause the devil's on my trail. I've been running so long that my feet don't work no more. Oh yeah, I've been running so long that my feet don't work no more. Oh no, it ain't easy, darling, when the devil's on my trail. Oh yeah.
Welcome to season 2 of 6 Feet Apart with Sean and TJ. Coming to you from the friendly confines, as always, of Felix E. Martin Jr. Hall here in Greenville, Kentucky. Big thanks to Greenville Tourism Commission for their sponsorship of this season, along with all of our sponsors here at Martin Hall. Thank you for your support this year, especially this year, and all the years in the past. We're glad to welcome today State Representative Melinda Gibbons Prunty, and she is here to share with us a little bit about what's going on in Frankfort, as well as news from around the area. Real quick, just so people may not know, what area does what are you covering with your seat?
My seat is the 15th Legislative District in Western Kentucky, and it's all of Muhlenberg and Southeast Hopkins counties. It's Anton, Southeast Madisonville, most of Arlington, all of Morton's Gap, parts of Nortonville, and all of White Plains.
Okay. I knew it was part of Hopkins County, but I wasn't sure exactly.
Southeast corner, basically.
Okay, good deal. So you've been in session, you're in session right now, you're on a break, is that?
We went in the first Tuesday of January, I think that was the 3rd. We were in for 8 days. We were supposed to be in for 4, but because of COVID, we hit the ground running and passed 6 bills right away, and we go back February 2nd.
Okay, so a busy week and a half there right off the bat, I guess.
Yes, so, very much so.
Was that expected going in, that you thought you were going to be doing?
Absolutely. COVID kind of course, you all know about COVID, obviously. COVID kind of unveiled a flaw in our emergency orders statutes in Kentucky, that it allowed a governor. When it was passed in the 40s, it was intended for like a 2-week emergency, and it was not intended to go with the thought of it being on for months and months and months. And there was no there was no statutory requirement for the governor to call us in for any kind of consultation. So for 9 months and almost a year now, we've been hearing from constituents, do something, do something, do something, and we've literally had no authority till we went back in. So one of the first bills we passed was House Bill 1, was for relief for schools, organizations, churches, businesses, that if they could follow a comprehensive plan for safety, that they could function, which actually, to be honest with you, our local health department director tried to do back in April, even before Memorial Day, when there was a deadline set for starting opening businesses again, right after Memorial Day. Our local health department director was vetting businesses and trying to let them open, and she got smacked down. And so I told her, I said, the governor needs to know this in order to inform his decisions and how he's moving forward with this. And we had a call, and we with some of his folks on his staff and local staff, and it kind of fell on deaf ears. And I actually was on a call with him. He was having legislative coffees with legislators on Fridays before COVID hit, and I hadn't had my turn. Not all of us had our turn. And before Memorial Day, the Tuesday before, there was a group that had a call, and there was no conversation. They said they could have gotten the information from their his 4 o'clock briefing every day, because there was no question, no interaction. And my call was on Friday, and we didn't have a clue who all was going to be on it or how long it was going to last or anything. But there had been some conversation between his staff and our staff, and they said, have your questions ready. So I had 4 questions prepared, and he gave an update, and there were 8 legislators on there. It was only a 30-minute call, and I thought, there's no way we can have a conversation. So I jumped in real early and said, Governor, overall, I think you've done a good job. At that point in time, I did. It was brand new. Nobody knew what was going on. I said, I said, there's no way we can have a full conversation here, obviously. You've indicated you're going to evaluate. I said, I would appreciate to see the table for the evaluation. Well, he kind of laughed, and he said, well, I'll get so-and-so to set up that call. And I said, for example, let your local health department director, if they can vet a business or an organization, they're going to be safe, let them open. So I asked last week, I asked Kathy Bethel, our director, I said, is House Bill 1 what you intended back in the spring? And she was just kind of shook her head. Yeah, that way, if a business or a church or an organization was going to function safely, they could open. Individual people, citizens, had a right to choose whether they went or not, but if you were going to follow precautions, let it function. Because, I had a small business owner say he was being discriminated against because he wasn't a Walmart or a Rural King. And I told her, I said, he's not wrong, and they weren't getting their unemployment insurance. They couldn't feed their families. And so it's like, so anyway, so that was House Bill 1 that we passed. Of course, he vetoed it, but trying to allow businesses, organizations, schools, if they can function safely, to function until the pandemic's over.
Yeah.
So
I don't think any of us ever imagined when this started that we were going to be in this situation here almost a year later.
No.
And it is a fine line trying to figure out what's best for the common good and in everyone's best interest, and also what's infringing upon
absolutely
people. So
I mean, the virus is real. People are dying. Nobody can deny that. And we're not saying don't operate safely, because I've got people contacting me now when they realized we were passing that. They said, well, so many people have just kind of chucked their mask because it's like they don't want to do it. And if we pass this, then that's just going to empower them more, embolden them more not to be safe. And I'm like, do you have your signs up? Lock your door. Don't let them in if they don't. You can do some things, but it's like they're on the side that would have been for that, but because of the way people have been reacting. And I said, we're not saying they don't have to operate safely. They still have to follow precautions.
Yeah.
But, people, alcoholism's up, abuse is up, mental health issues, depression's up. I mean, there's some things worse than the virus.
There's got to be a middle ground there, but it's not just all or nothing.
Right.
And like I said, if you're open, you've got to follow some guidelines to do it safely.
Right.
So yeah, it's
not
a situation I would want to be in.
Well, and I told Secretary Friedlander in the Cabinet for Health and Family Services and Dr. Stack, who's over public health, I said, I wouldn't want your all's jobs. And they kind of laughed. They said, we don't know if we want our jobs either. I said, and I wouldn't want his job. But I said, if I was him, I said, I'd be asking all over the state, what's going on in your neck of the woods? Because I said, if it's going on in Muhlenberg, it's got to be going on all over Kentucky. And, let's see if we can't work something out. But, I mean, that was back in the spring.
Yeah.
So here we are, businesses have closed. Some of them are not going to open back up. I mean, the thing I hear the most about still is unemployment insurance. I've still got people emailing me saying they haven't gotten anything from back in the spring. Now, some are more recent, more October, November, but it's such a, crazy, messed up system.
And that's all over the nation. That's
right.
not just here. That's everywhere.
Right.
Right.
But they've made some changes. They've took it back to the Labor Cabinet, which plus or minus, I don't know if that's good or bad, but it's the people, the contacts that we've got that make the difference. Because there was one, when it was still at Education Workforce Development, she was responsive, and I was getting some response for some of my folks. And then they changed it, but to the Labor Cabinet, and the person there was not, there wasn't a lot of response. But the girl that's in charge now that I can go to, she's very responsive, and I can send her my constituents' information, and she's assigning their cases and kind of moving things along. So anyway, that's the part that bothers me is the people that I hear from that aren't getting any kind of assistance that really need it and deserve it. You know, can't put food on their table. So.
What else are you hearing from local people? What else is, if not
most of the time,
COVID is not an overreaching thing, but what else?
Most of the time, what I hear about are roads. But I have a good relationship with our district road engineer, and she's very responsive, and her workers are very responsive to check the roads. There are certain roads that are in the road plan that are on the docket to get worked on, but then if there's a fallen away shoulder or a crack in the road or something like that, or ditches that need to be cleaned out, that sort of thing. Those are the main things that I hear from constituents most of the time are road issues, but along with the unemployment right now.
So far, we've avoided big snow this year and deterioration of the roads, so maybe we can continue that. It's weird to be in school and not want a snow day, but I just assume move on to warm weather and get to spring, and let's just be done with it.
Right.
So.
Well, I mean, one of the issues is that back during the recession, when the price of gas went way up, they put relief in for the taxpayer to lower the gas prices and lower the tax, but they didn't put anything into when the um, interest rates came down or the price of gas came down. They didn't allow the tax to go back up. Well, they lost millions of dollars when the recession hit. They lost millions of dollars, and the road funds have been depleted for a long time, and that we keep hearing that. I've heard that ever since I came in office. We need more money for roads. We need more money for roads. But they're really, I mean, it's almost getting to the desperate stage now. But I told Secretary Gray, he talked to our caucus during our retreat in December. We were trying to look at what we were going to address this session. I said, look, I said, until the unemployment insurance issues get straightened out and the economy gets opened back up and people get to go back to work, they don't want to hear about an increase in taxes on gas. So I don't know what's going to happen there, because I know the county judges want it. I know the magistrates want it. The local courts want it. So I don't know what's going to happen there. But they're trying to get a plan out for it. There's been no means of taxing or getting a usage fee. It's a usage fee. If you're going to use the road, you're causing the damage, so you need to help repair it. It's kind of, I said, you may need to do a different PR on that. The chamber wants the PR on that, but for the hybrid vehicles, electric vehicles, there's never been any way to get them to help pay for their use of the roads. And so that's in the new plan. It's just trying to get to the end of it. So I don't know if it'll pass this session or not, but that's a biggie.
We've got your contact information. We'll put that up on the screen now for people if they want to reach out and with questions or concerns, they can certainly do that.
Okay.
You mentioned House Bill 1, obviously right off the bat, but what are some of the other things that you all brought up in those 8 days that you were in session?
House Bill 2 was extending the independent authority to the Attorney General of the state of Kentucky. Kentucky is one of the most pro-life states in the country. Since 2017, we've passed several pieces of legislation that were not enacted because our former Attorney General, who's now our governor, wouldn't enforce them. And during the pandemic, I don't know if y'all know it or not, Planned Parenthood opened back up. And we were down to one abortion clinic in Kentucky, EMW Women's Clinic in Louisville. And the reason Planned Parenthood closed was because they didn't have transfer agreements that if an abortion went awry and they needed to transfer a female to a hospital to get extended care, they didn't have a transfer agreement in or the hospital transporting agreements in. And so that's why they had to close. And in the middle of this, with the new administration, they told them they could reapply for their license, so it opened back up. And which was very crazy, because at a time when we weren't allowed to travel out of Kentucky, they told us that there were cars from all other states, surrounding states, who had closed their abortion clinics, were coming to Kentucky to get their abortions. When other people in Kentucky couldn't get elective surgeries, they couldn't get a hip replacement, they couldn't get different, just elective surgeries done, but yet abortions were taking place. Well, the statute prior to House Bill 2 is that the Attorney General would have to get permission from the Secretary from the Cabinet of Health and Family Services in order to enforce those laws. This would give him the independent authority. The Secretary would have the authority, and the Attorney General would both have the authority to enforce the laws that are on the books with regards to abortions and abortion providers. So that's House Bill 2, and that's been vetoed. House Bill 3 would allow any Kentuckian who wanted to bring a case against the state or an elected official, they wouldn't have to file it in Frankfort Circuit Court. They could file it in the court of their residence. So it would give them better access, easier access to that, and also provide, if they want to do it virtually because of COVID and everything and travel, that would help that. Senate Bill 1 is extending the executive emergency powers to spread them out, share them with co-equal branches of government, with the legislature, and if it's enacted, would give the governor, any governor in the future, the authority to act in an emergency, but after 30 days, they would be required to consult the legislature. That co-equal branches, because there's been money borrowed, and the legislature is responsible for the money, the budget, and fiscal responsibilities. All that's been going on now, and we've had no say in that. So it would be extending, modifying the executive orders so that they would give the emergency power at the beginning for 30 days, but then require the legislature to be brought in and consulted. So which that's been vetoed. We also, Senate Bill 2, once a law is passed, cabinets do regulations to implement those laws, and sometimes those regulations that are written by those cabinets are not necessarily what the intention of the bill was to begin with. So it would require legislative oversight to look at those regulations that were put out during an emergency order, because you can get around the law through regulation. So it's basically writing law through regulation. So it would require legislative oversight for that as well. I'm trying to think. Senate Bill 9, or Senate Bill 9. Yeah, Senate Bill 9 is the Born Alive bill. And last year at the end of session, when time was running out, House Bill 2, which was the Attorney General Authority, and Senate Bill 9, the Born Alive bill, were put together. And they were separated back out this session and passed separately. But the Born Alive bill would require that medical care, a standard of care, if a baby's born alive, whether it's through a botched abortion or a natural birth, standard of care that a baby would be given medical care. So, and that's been vetoed. So, well, actually, excuse me, correction. That became law because he didn't sign it. If a law lays on his desk and doesn't get signed within 10 days, it automatically becomes law, and he let that one become law on its own. He didn't sign it, and he didn't veto it. So, and ironically, interestingly to note, that became law on the anniversary of Roe v. Wade, January 22nd. So, yeah.
Quite the coincidence, or whatever the word is. You mentioned some of these have been vetoed. What is there another course of action then once that happens, or what is it?
Yes, we can override the veto, and we have the votes to do that, and that will be the intention when we go back.
Okay, and you go back when?
February 2nd.
February 2nd.
Next Tuesday.
And is that, how many days is that session?
This is a short session. This year's a short session, which is a 30-day session. It ends March 31st.
Okay.
There will be a veto period. There's usually a veto period, and usually lasts 7 to 10 days between the end of session and then 31st of March. 31st of March is sine die, which would be the actual, by the Constitution, has to end by the 31st. So.
Gotcha. Okay. It's obviously a conversation that's gone on for the last 10 months now. I've lost track of how long it's been even. But, you know, COVID has been such an overreaching, all-encompassing thing that we've sort of lost track maybe of other things that have gone on. I know that your husband is a physician, so I'm sure his life has been greatly impacted by COVID. But let's step outside, if we can, a little bit of that world. Is there anything else that you'd like to share with us about maybe what's going on in Frankfurt, or what we're doing here that can sort of maybe step out of the shadow of COVID for a little bit?
Other legislation, other things that I'm working on. I'm trying to work on uninsured motorist insurance issues for local constituents. It's something I've been working on ever since I was elected the first time. And there was a CAVIS. It's a software plan that would be able to check real-time insurance if somebody had insurance and if you had an accident or whatever. They were trying to implement that. In the middle of trying to make adjustments, they were implementing that, and we're going to do it on boats, water vehicles, that sort of thing. They were going to pilot it on that and then move it towards land vehicles. And I've been told just recently that may not happen until 23, 24. And so I'm going back and revisiting that issue to see. They said in some states, if a motorist doesn't have insurance, with fines if they don't have it, or if they have to pay a fee to get their registration back, that there's fewer people that don't have insurance in those states. So I'm having some research done on that to see if I can address that issue for local constituents. I've got colon cancer. Colon cancer is a big issue in Kentucky, and we just lowered the screening age to 45. And a very dear friend here in Greenville actually was diagnosed with it at 45, and so it's very kind of near and dear to my heart. And I've had a lot of friends who've had family members with colon cancer. I serve on the Kentucky Cancer Screening Advisory Committee, and trying to codify, make sure Medicaid pays for those screenings. They've been paying for them, but we want to get it in law so that MCOs and Medicaid in the future can't deny payment on those screenings. So that's something personally that I'm working on. I mean, we want to continue to support public education to the best degree that we can. Uh, I'm trying to think of other things. There's a mental health issue, mental health having funding for it with the school safety bill that was passed, Senate Bill 1 a couple years ago after the Marshall County shootings. You can lock a school down, you can put, safety doors on, you can get school officers in and that sort of thing, but you got to work on the soft side, which is the mental health issues. And trying to get those kids screened at a younger age and trying to get, if they have indicators towards risky behaviors or being at risk to potentially commit something as heinous as a school shooting, trying to get those kids screened and address those issues early on in school. That's a issue that's been brought to me recently that I want to work on and see about getting funding and look at the savings that could be had both in the school system, in the incarceration. If you catch them early and help them and keep them from getting in the breaking the law and that sort of thing, you could save money there. Trying to look at that issue and see if that can't be something we can pass and give more hope to our kids. So that's something that's near and dear to my heart.
Certainly a case where prevention is better than cure.
Exactly. Exactly. I was very impressed. I heard a presentation the other day that talked about it's just a screening, and they've got all kinds of resources to help the schools implement to try to address it and to all the folks that have been put in place, the school nurses and the counselors and so forth, to try to help deal with these issues. Give them the resources they need, identify the issues, and then give them the resources they need to address it with each individual kid. They can do it in groups, they can do it in schools, and they can do it as individuals. So it's something that I've become very excited about recently and feel like could be a bipartisan issue that we could work on together because, everybody cares about the kids. So,
sure. Yeah, I would think school safety goes beyond any borders or boundaries or across the aisle for sure.
Well, a couple years ago when we were still having some committee meetings in the interim, we got to travel. They had a meeting down at, our education committee met down at Cadiz at Trigg County. And the school safety committee met right afterwards, and I stayed and listened. And they had a peer-to-peer kind of where they were intentionally mixing the kids, the farm kid with the school jock, with the nerdy girl that read all the time, with multicultural kids. And I thought, this is youth ministry 101. Get the kids together that wouldn't normally socialize, break down those barriers and those prejudices and let them build relationships and then let that permeate throughout the school. Because I know when I used to come to eat lunch at the schools with the youth ministers, it's like, I'd always try to go over to the kid. I go to the ones I knew, but the one who was sitting by himself, and I always told our kids at church, go sit with those kids who, invite those kids who are sitting by themselves to eat with you. How can we build those relationships and prevent those heinous crimes from happening, those heinous acts from happening for whatever reason? Because the program that was presented to me the other day, talks about bullying, talks about ostracism and those kinds of things. We just need to help our kids learn how to deal with that, especially when they're doing this all the time and they're on the computer. They need to know how to relate to one another.
Yeah.
So
worked for the Breakfast Club. So
right, yeah, absolutely.
there's a great example right there of bringing the different groups together.
Yeah. So some of the nuts and bolts of that you're talking about, the soft side, the mental health for kids and adults too. And I know that we've got some mutual friends that are working on a like a clinic here in town. Your husband's old office, I think, right, for some mental health issues. But it doesn't seem that anywhere in this area we can keep a psychologist or a psychiatrist for any period of time. Right? I mean, it's just you go and you visit with this person or this doctor, and then a few months later they're up and gone somewhere. I mean, why is that? Why is it that we can't? Is there not enough funding here to support these people, or is there? Why is that?
The Penny Royal Mental Health, or just in general,
in general, private practice with the hospitals or with, and speaking from experience, I mean, just you have one doctor for some mental health issues, and a few months later they're gone, and there's somebody else, and you have to start all over again, and it's nowhere close. It's Madisonville, Bowling Green, Hopkinsville, Owensboro. I mean, there's just nothing close that's handy for the adults and kids that need speak with somebody on a regular basis.
Well, actually, it's the first I've heard of it, but I'll be glad to look into it.
It's an issue, I promise you.
Right,
It's an
right.
issue.
I mean, I know when I was still working physical therapy, a good psychologist is worth their weight in gold.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, yeah. But as far as knowing why they're not staying, I'm not sure. But if it's a state organization, it may need attention with funding.
I can't really speak for the state organization as much.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but
But if it's a private practice, that's their own individual choice.
They sort of go where the numbers are.
Right,
So
right.
that would be.
But if it's a state organization, if it's a funding issue, then it definitely could be looked at.
it's needed.
I saw a thing yesterday where it said that schools in Las Vegas they were putting students back in school because of the rising number of teen suicides.
And that's an issue because of COVID.
Yeah.
I mean, they're being isolated, and that's what I'm saying. There's some things worse than the virus.
Right.
I mean, I know it's bad. I know it's but I just feel like we've got to add a more common sense approach and more.
Right.
You know.
But on the same side of that coin, the virus is the original problem, right? I mean, you've got to kind of snuff something out of the root before you can help solve all these other problems, right? Because
I mean, the
virus in and of
vaccines are going. I mean, they've got the tiers of people getting vaccinated. I mean, they've got the healthcare workers, the over 70 in the nursing homes. They're doing the school personnel to try to get the kids back in school, and then they're going to do 65 and over and immunodepressed, and then the general population. But it can be a both and. It doesn't have to be an either or. I mean, we can do our precautions, and I think those have been proven. The CDC says they're safe. So as long as we follow them, while you're working on getting at the root of the problem, because part of what we tried to do with House Bill 1, going back to House Bill 1, is long-term care facilities. You got the elderly who don't understand why their family's not coming to see them, and so part of that bill was to try to and it's a choice of nursing homes is to allow those long-term care centers, if they're willing, if they want an essential family member to, if they're screened and they know they're safe and they follow precautions, that they can come in and be a caregiver with the supervision and the approval of the long-term care facility. It's not a have-to thing, but it's allowing that person to come in and keep that elderly person, if they've got dementia issues or something like that, they can help them and keep them oriented, help them with their finances, help them do things that, and if the nursing home staff are short because they've got COVID issues with the staff, they could help out with the staff, and keep those folks going. I'll just give you an example. I had one constituent came out to my house to do plumbing, and he asked me about it. He said, my sister had to get tested because she was having surgery. Their mother is on the long-term care, on the second floor at the hospital. One half is long-term care and the other half is outpatient pre-op and post-op surgery. She was up there having pre-op and post-op, was leaving, and their mother came to the door and couldn't understand. And I'm like, oh my gosh, she'd been tested, she was negative. I mean, that would be an ideal situation to be able to apply a little common sense and let her go see her mother. They haven't seen her in forever, and they just don't understand. And it's like, so the nursing home, and then children in in-state care, that they've been denied their visits with their parents. If you want Families First, which is a federal program to try to keep families together, keeping those kids from their parents, that's been happening. They've been not allowed to see their kids in in-state care, trying to allow some of that to happen as well, so that hopefully they can be reunited. So which would decrease the mental health and the stress. So it's hard. It's a fine balancing line. I'm not saying there's everybody knows all the answers, but there needs to be a little bit more common sense applied, I think. That's my opinion.
It's certainly not a black and white issue where everything is, as I said before, all or nothing. Hopefully we'll get to a place where common sense will prevail.
And you said common good. I mean, sometimes you got to do stuff for the common good, the good of everybody, and that includes being safe, And I think some people are defying that, which is not good.
Yeah.
So, I mean, sometimes when you put that much pressure on somebody, they're going to boing back. You go from one extreme to the other, and if it was more in the middle, maybe these people over here wouldn't be saying, well, "I ain't wearing one."
Yeah.
Well, tell me what to do.
Right.
So I don't know. I mean, I just kind of human nature.
I think either or both extremes, makes people go further and further away from the middle.
Right.
So, and that can be said about so many
Anything.
things in
Right.
our world today.
Right. Absolutely.
I guess we've sort of done things backwards today, but we sort of skipped over. Imagine that, we're doing things backwards.
Yeah,
We've
right.
sort of skipped over just letting you introduce yourself a little bit. People obviously in our area know you as you are in your third term here as our state representative. But just a real quick introduction of who Melinda Gibbons Prunty is.
Well, I was born in Ashland, Kentucky, and raised there with 2 older brothers. My dad was a pipe fitter for Ashland Refining Company. My mom was a stay-at-home mom till I was in 5th grade, and then she went to work at the school, so she was off and we were off. So I was always used to have my mom around. Raised in the church. Went to UK, University of Kentucky. Well, I went to ACC, Ashland Community College, 1 year, and then transferred to UK and got my bachelor's in physical therapy. Met Eddie, my husband, in gross anatomy. We took gross anatomy and embryology together. First year PT students, first year medical students took those 2 classes together. We married the middle of my senior year of physical therapy. I finished up and worked at Cardinal Hill Hospital there until we went to Columbus, Georgia for 3 years for his residency in family practice. And we had our oldest daughter at UK when I was still working and still living in Lexington. And then we had Lindsay in Georgia. She's a Georgia peach. And then we moved back to Kentucky in '84. And he established his practice here. And then we had our youngest daughter, Hillary, after we moved here. So I practiced physical therapy for nearly 20 years. After we moved here, I did home health physical therapy for 10 years. I worked at Jenny Stewart for 18 months, twice a week. I chose physical therapy on purpose because I could be part-time and be a mom. And drove to Hopkinsville, and that got kind of old, so I did home health physical therapy here in Muhlenberg County for 10 years. And that helped me get to know the people, get to know the community. And Eddie would always, when we drive around, he'd go, "How do you know this road?" And I said, "'Cause so-and-so lives right over there." And, I sat in the floor in homes with, I did a lot of pediatrics, and I got to see a lot there of, they're able-bodied. Why aren't they doing something? I would have given the shirt off my back to anybody that said they needed it until I was like, maybe that's not helping them, just giving them something, So that kind of taught me that. I was in the schools. I got to go in the schools and did physical therapy there as well. My passion, or Eddie said it was my golf, was youth ministry. I volunteered youth ministry at our church, organized it and planned it and worked with others, and started working at the diocese, volunteering for diocesan programs, camps and things, leadership camps, and then felt called to be the director of youth ministry. So I was the director of youth ministry for almost 20 years for the Diocese of Owensboro. But they let me function from here with the computer, and then I would travel to Paducah or wherever because it covered all of Western Kentucky. So, and then over the issue of abortion was, I felt called to run for office. So that's kind of my short story in a short segment.
All right.
So.
You mentioned Doc said that youth ministry was your golf, but we know golf is his golf. So did that bug not ever bite you? Did you?
No, I would play. I don't even know what you call it. Scrambles. I'd play scrambles periodically, and I'd chip everyone. I'd go first and chip or putt, and I could show them how the green broke or something like that. Earn my dinner. Sometimes I get it in the hole, but
yeah,
it just took too much time. I mean, he loves it. I love going around riding with him. If he's playing, it's beautiful. I'll take a book and read, whatever. But I mean, I've got clubs and I'll play, but I've never taken it up that much. But we moved to the lake. We moved to Lake Malone after 25 years, and after the girls all graduated, and I finally got my pontoon. And when I got it, he said, "Well, there's your Christmas, your whatever for so many years." And I said, "How many years we belong to the country club? And how many years did you pay green fees? And how many years?" I don't think so. So anyway, yeah. So he's actually, when we moved out to the lake, he got him a tractor. And he said, if somebody told me 10 years ago that I'd rather be on my tractor than playing golf, I'd have admitted him to Western State, but he kind of likes being on his tractor. So, and he's kind of, as he's getting older, his game's not as good. So
yeah,
it is what it is.
My game's terrible. So
he still enjoys it, but not as often. So.
Representative Prunty, thank you so much for being here today, and we're glad to have you, and thank you for supporting us here at Felix C. Martin Jr. Hall. We appreciate it. It's always
Thank
good to
you,
see
sir.
you and the grandkids here for shows. And hopefully we'll
Yeah.
be back to that soon.
I hope so too.
Please.
Fingers crossed and knock on wood and all those things.
Right.
So we thank you for joining us today, and a big thanks to Greenville Tourism Commission and all our sponsors here for 6 Feet Apart. We'll see you again soon.
All right. Well, I've been down so long that my mind can't get no rest.